on behalf of 50 in Tech, as well as to just give you a little bit of an introduction on why diversity, equity, and inclusion is important within the tech workspace, and introducing you to a few steps that you can take to really get started on this. So the first thing is tech should have no gender. There's a huge diversity gap in the tech workplace, in the tech industry. And as we see, in this very fast-paced, rapidly growing industry, a lot of women are getting left behind. It's starting really at the grassroots level when we're talking about seeing women move from, for example, higher education into their professional lives. And this is truly reflected within that space. So at the moment, when we look globally, the stats show that there are about 25% of women within the tech workforce. So this is not speaking about the entire workforce of a tech company, because the representation may differ depending on the roles that they have. But when we're looking at specifically women who occupy tech roles, there's around 25% in global statistics. Within Europe, we're sitting at around 28%. And then we have about 5% of in leadership positions. As we know, it's really important to have women in leadership positions for those who are aspiring to, first of all, have role models, but also to ensure that there are women in decision-making positions, as well as play spaces of influence. There are 10% female co-founders, and 2.7% of all funding goes to women. So as a result, we have about 1 woman in 2 leaving tech companies permanently after 8 years. So my first question for you, before I get to that next slide, if maybe you want to share, what other reasons you think women are leaving tech so quickly and permanently? You can share that in the chat, or you can also just put your microphone on and share. Okay, someone said the culture. Definitely the tech culture. Anything else? We'll go into that a little bit later. Too much pressure, the salary, absolutely. Absolutely. All right, so those are all very amongst the top reasons why women actually leave the tech industry. And the first was the culture. So the environment, too masculine, exactly. So 46% of women actually say that they've experienced discrimination within the tech workplace. And when we look at discrimination, we should look at it from a variety of lenses. We like to call this intersectionality. So basically, when you look at discrimination through a lens of intersectionality, you're looking at one, yes, you're a woman. So there's, all the discrimination that comes with that, but also there are other parts that define your identity. So that could be, for example, race or ethnicity. It could also be, for instance, your gender identity, and so forth, that make us who we are. So there are women who, exactly, age discrimination, and that could be at either end. So right on the higher end, where there's a lot of discrimination against older people in tech, not necessarily just women, but it's prevalent for women, and then also for younger people within tech. So here we're looking at juniors, or people looking for a first experience within the tech industry. So there's discrimination on either of those ends, and it's quite prevalent for women. The next is, if this can move, excuse me. Main reasons are the lack of career growth opportunities. So when we're looking at career progression, a lot of women feel that there aren't many opportunities for them to grow within the companies that they're in, and they cannot see the bigger picture of their career. So it might mean that there's something within the company that's not formalized for them to have that perspective of growth, and also poor management. And I think in my job at 50 in Tech, I speak a lot with our clients that we work with, and management is a subject that comes up a lot in terms of their diversity, equity, and inclusion actions. And that's because they noticed a need for this. So a lot of the time you'll have them seeking out management training, and having a lot of initiatives in place to ensure that the managers that they put in place, especially in tech, especially in startup, where there are opportunities to get into a management position quite early on, there's a need for people to learn different management styles, to learn how to approach different people, different personalities, etc., and still meet their goals with their teams. So poor management is one of them. And of course, someone mentioned that, and that is the gender pay gap. There is a huge gender pay gap in Europe. In the EU, it's 18.4%, if I recall correctly. So women are actually earning in their working career about 400,000 euros less than men over their working life. So that's a big, big problem that we are trying to tackle. Toxicity. So this links back to the culture. I'm not sure if many of you have heard about this, but people like to coin it the bro culture. And this is because there's that perception that tech is very much a more male industry, and a lot of the time, and I get this a lot speaking to different women, is that you have to assimilate, to fit, and that brings in that whole idea of cultural fit within a company, which we'll speak about a bit later. But toxicity and bro culture is one of the top main reasons why women say, I'm tired, I can't be my complete self. And remember, when it comes to diversity, equity, and inclusion, a big part of it is having that sense of belonging. And a big part of feeling like you belong somewhere is being able to be your complete self within that space. So that's one of the reasons. And so let's do what DE&I, which we like to call it, actually can contribute to your company. So one of them is that it leads to a proven loss of income for the economy if you don't actually put this in practice, but it can bring higher performances within companies. So we see for startups, especially those co-founded by women, a 63% improvement in performance. And then within Europe, we've seen great improvements in GDP, in revenue, and it's very, very important to ensure, especially in companies that are innovative, it's really important to track these metrics and in order for us to actually prove the impact of diversity, equity, and inclusion. I'm just moving on to the next slide. Let's quickly. All right. So how can you attract and retain more women? So attraction is really, really important. I know there are a lot of things that we can say to attract women, but when they actually get within the company, a really important point is to try to retain that and to maintain that safe working place. And a lot of the time, how we track this is looking at metrics such as your employee turnover. So how do we do it? First of all, you need to ensure that basically have diversity, equity, and inclusion integrated within the very fabric of your organization. So you ask yourself the questions, okay, what do we actually have to, or do a little internal audit. What do we need to improve within our company in order for us to be a safe and inclusive workplace for women? What is it that we need to change? There's a lot of reflection that is needed there. And building, promoting stronger employer brand identity. So does the identity that you reflect you know, externally, does it actually, or that you show externally actually reflect what it is that you stand for? Does it reflect the type of people that you're looking to attract within your company? So really looking at the greater scheme of things and ensuring that your initiatives are geared towards the type of people that you are trying to attract within your company. So not prioritizing diversity is becoming non-optional, and I see this every single day. A lot of women, and when I interview women, one of the questions I ask them is diversity, equity, and inclusion something that you were looking for when you were looking for your job, or when you were actually researching this company? And it's really one of the top priorities amongst women now, especially within these last few years. And we've had a lot of talks, and it's been a subject that is really gaining traction within the tech industry. Best believe it is a priority. And if you do actually prioritize this, and it shows with your employer branding, and it's something that you speak about and introduce within that interview stage, you're much more likely to retain employees. So Basecamp is just an example of a company where we had a mass exodus of employees after they changed their policies. So here we had one of the diversity, equity, and inclusion initiatives actually shut down, which was their diversity council. So just to say, a diversity council is basically like a little committee that you have within your company. And within a diversity council, you have different co-creators. So your co-creators could be people within leadership. It could be people that represent different diverse groups within the company, and people who are diversity champions or inclusion champions that want to use their voice, or even allies and want to use their voice to give a voice to other people within the company, and champion initiatives for a more inclusive workspace. And Basecamp actually shut this down before they even had their first meeting. So there was quite a lot of talk about that within the space, and it's really interesting how so many people within the company were influenced to actually leave their job because they were not open to having these initiatives in place. So I see a question. There's here a question here. There's diverse people, but not white male. So when we're talking about diversity, and I actually should have brought this up in the beginning.
So this was just about the previous slide where you said it was, I don't remember what it was, but it says those people are leaving, and those, I was just trying to make sure that those people, who is those?
Yes, exactly. It's definitely people who are looking for workspaces that prioritize diversity, equity, and inclusion, that are impacted highly by discrimination. So when we look at the different groups through that intersectional lens, and also women especially. But with that said, what I wanted to say at the beginning, remember I had all those different metrics about you know, the percentage or proportions of women in the workforce and different roles. It's really important when you're thinking about diversity, equity, and inclusion, and as much as we're advocating for women, that we always look at gaining parity. You know, so how close can we get to that 50%? When you're at either extreme, it's not good. So for me, looking at a company that has 90% women and 10% women, neither of them are good. You know, we're trying to get closer right there to the median and reach some kind of equilibrium when it comes to the proportions of women in different roles and their representations at different levels within the organization. So having 90% of women and 10% of men is not good either. We're not trying to exclude men. So how can you attract women in tech? So firstly is to start thinking about diversity from day one. So I want to really commend you for all being here, because that means that you're really thinking about this at the moment. And I think it's also really important to do it now to ensure that it's part of your company culture and that it's something you can build upon as you progress, rather than starting it at a much later stage when you actually have a lot of catching up to do. So start from day one, and it starts with just thinking, having those conversations, making sure that it's something that people are free to discuss and bring up within your teams, and ensuring that you can actually even create a space where people can share resources and learn. It's all about learning, whether it's from top management to someone you just hired yesterday. Ensure that you always have that culture of learning. So a strong involvement of the CEO is mandatory. Just that having top management buy-in is very important. So as your company scales, as you have a lot more employees, you're going to have the opportunity to build diversity councils, as I described earlier. You'll also be able to build employee resource groups, which are more focused on specific subjects of diversity, equity, and inclusion that people are interested in. So for example, you could have an employee parenthood, or you could have one for women specifically, or you could have one for people of color, etc. And these are actually led by employees, but they need leadership buy-in. So it's really important to have that support and commitment shown at all levels of the organization. And it's also really important to have that sense of self-reflection. We're constantly learning. I'm constantly learning in the DEI space. There's always something new, and it's important to be aware of our own unconscious biases, because we want to lead with inclusivity. So inclusive leadership is a priority. Avoid referral. So go outside of your network. How are you diversifying your pipeline? Is this a little silo, a little bubble, of people just within that same network that you're familiar with? Or are you reaching out to different communities of people that you actually want to see represented within your network? So for example, reaching out to minority communities, maybe groups of people who are underrepresented within the tech space, working with schools, working with organizations, working with us like 50 in Tech, which is specifically for women. And then your recruitment. So are your job posts inclusive? Are they gender neutral? We try to avoid, for example, using terminology that is maybe discouraging when we think about, for example, what could I say? Self-determined is great, but maybe saying something like, you will keep going until you won't stop until you find the solution, and this and that, which is great, but how do you word something to show that you're supporting employees and you're not pushing a lack of work-life balance? How do you avoid using pronouns within a job description? There is no need for he, she, etc. So ensure that they're completely gender neutral, and that people can see themselves applying for this job. A lot of the time, women especially will not apply for a job unless they meet 100% of the requirements. So even when you're writing that job description, consider perhaps having must-haves and then having nice-to-haves, you know, and in that sense, at least someone has a shorter list to go through when it comes to seeing themselves within that particular position. Endorse your female talents. So this ties in with mentorship, it ties in with sponsorship. It's really, really important to, when we talk about sponsorship, I'll go into it a little later, is ensuring that your female talents or your woman talents have visibility and that you endorse them for particular opportunities within the company. And then going back to culture fit, we spoke about it a little bit before. A lot of the time, companies to test for culture fit, for instance, will have maybe, instead of actually looking at, okay, what are our values? Is this person aligned with what our goals are as a company? Do we stand for the same, you know, do we have the same vision in terms of the growth of our company, etc.? Do we have maybe the same ways of working, but having that room for flexibility, because not everyone is exactly the same in the way that they work? People look at culture fit more from the lens of, are they a mirror of me, you know? Can this person reflect exactly what it is that I want them to be, rather than actually seeing the person for themselves? A lot of the time people test culture fit by having, for example, gaming days, or you know, it depends on the company, but a lot of women are saying, you know, I'd miss us with that. That's not who I am. Although there are women who that's who they are, and that's great, but we know we need a lot more flexibility in terms of how we test culture fit. And then valuing different skills, you know, not just technical skills, and also having that vision of, you know what, maybe let's give this person an opportunity to grow within this role and grow into a different role if possible, you know. So what are the technical skills that they have? And a lot of the time you have women coming within the tech industry that perhaps have had a career change as well. So what skills do they have that are transferable, that they can actually use within this role? And what soft skills do they have that we need and we value and can be used within the company? So look at a good balance of both. And when it comes to technical skills as well, a lot of feedback that we get from women is that the test, you know, the technical test needs to be a bit more adapted. So, you know, instead of having, for example, live coding, you know, at the interview, perhaps giving more assignments, or even saying, you know what kind of work have you done? Can you perhaps refer us to something you've done so that we can have a look at your personal projects, or, you know, something that you're interested in showing us. And that cuts down that anxiety by a whole lot, and it relaxes people a little bit and allows them that space to be more comfortable to share. And also allows you a little bit of a different perspective, because you see someone's motivation and you see someone's you know, their passions and their skills in a different way, compared to, you know, specifically like ticking boxes that you set forth for a specific assignment. So think more flexibility in that sense. And then, is the company culture inclusive enough? So a lot of the time, just in the past, the idea of parenthood within a company, and parenthood refers to not just biological parents, it can also refer to adoptive parents, it can refer to second parents, it can refer to caregivers. So you're looking after children a lot of the time, especially when it comes to startup environment, companies are not really thinking about this as yet. And I know that it can be something that feels far-fetched, especially if your workforce is what you would consider young, you know. A lot of the time I've heard feedback like, well, you know, the people in our company are really young. They're not thinking about having children at this stage. And it's not really something that we've thought about. We'll get there. Get there. And, you know, it's really, really important when you're in inclusive spaces to have thought about all of these things prior, and to really have at least an idea of what, for example, in your country is a legal obligation. So, for example, in France, women have a specific number of weeks of maternity leave, men have a specific number of weeks. What is your obligation as a company? How are you in your country? Are you subsidized by the government? Do your employees know what their rights are in terms of parental leave, etc.? And then from there onwards, you can build, you know, you can build your parental leave policy and your benefits extending beyond legal obligation as you scale. But it's really important to think about what are the kind of things that people need, that parents need, that women need, and are we prepared for that? Because it could happen at any time. Right. Ambition declines as they progress in their careers, so promote them early. So 70% of women are very ambitious within the tech industry, but 31% of them feel like they are stuck in their place. And this ties back to that first point that we had made about career progression. A lot of women leave because there are no opportunities for career growth. So if you see an opportunity to help someone progress within their career, and of course, we consider merit when it comes to this, and we also consider different ways of evaluating the merit, you know. So instead of having an annual review, you know, just one time, companies can, for example, have regular one-on-one sessions, regular career pathing sessions. So career pathing is really sitting with your employees and understanding what their goals are in terms of their career growth and what it is that they're looking for, and trying to see how you can help maneuver them into that space. So if you can promote them earlier. And like we said, don't just focus on individuals, but track metrics. So are you looking at the gender pay gap within a company? Are you looking at the gap in terms of the proportion of men and women within different roles? And when it comes to salary, it's really important to also look at, okay, what are what are we seeing within the market? You know, can we create a salary bridge, perhaps? And really track those metrics so that you can also have a reflection a bit later on and see how much you've progressed as a company and see where it is that you need to work. And really sharing your metrics within the company is a very, very good practice in terms of diversity, equity, and inclusion, because a big part of it is ensuring transparency. So hey, this is where we're at. This is where we want to go. Let's move on this journey together. And a lot of employees feel reassured by that transparency. So mentoring and sponsoring, really, really important, both of them. Mentoring, perhaps you could share with me in the chat what you think that distinction between those two is. Or you can just tell me if you switch on your microphone. Anyone like to share? Okay, so mentoring is like, do this, and sponsoring is like, let me help you do this. Exactly. That's exactly it. So mentoring is giving advice. So a lot of the time when it comes to mentoring within a company, we match someone who is just within the company with someone who a lot of the time is more senior to them, and that person has the role of offering them advice, really taking them under their wing, and a lot of the time also helping them learn. So teaching and coaching in some aspect. And then sponsorship is saying, hey, I'm going to use my position, a lot of the time position of privilege, to help give you a voice. So I am going to recommend you for this speaking gig, or I am going to recommend you to take leadership in this project because I feel that you are capable, and I know that I can open that door for you because I understand what your career progression goals are, and so forth. So sponsorship is really taking yourself, taking your position of privilege or position of authority, for instance,
C'est dans ça la réponse. Est-ce que
and
c'est le modèle particulier du cri de Pegasus
microphone is
comme le
on.
résultat dans...
Okay. So yeah, sponsorship is really saying, I'm going to take my position, I'm going to put you in contact with the people I know, I am going to speak about you, speak about your work, and share what you're doing with my network and so forth. All right, so now let me just give you a little overview of what it is that we do at 50 in Tech. So we are actually a platform that matches women or really talent within the tech industry with inclusive and safe working places. So we base our selection of the workplaces that we advise women to join on 4 pillars, and one of them is flexibility. So flexibility ties into, of course, work-life balance. A lot of women are looking for that sense of work-life balance at, for instance, the last 2 years, especially with the COVID pandemic that's happened. This is actually a lot more in demand. You can see with a lot of companies also going remote and adapting in that sense. A lot of women looking for flexibility in terms of their jobs because there's a lot more responsibility. Women have a lot more responsibility than men, whilst have reported more, assuming more responsibility than men when it comes to responsibilities at home, childcare, etc. So how do we adapt? How do we as a company ensure that we allow space for that, for women to have that healthy balance? So having maternity and paternity leave systems in place is really important, but also looking at benefits. So for example, can we have paid leave for a sick child, for example, paid leave if I have a family member who is ill, etc. When it comes to remote friendliness, what are the different policies that we have in place there? Do we have full remote? Do we have a hybrid policy, and so forth? Anti-discrimination policies, absolutely important. If there's one thing that you can take away from this presentation today, is ensure that from the get-go, you have policies in place that speak on discrimination and harassment. So ensuring that within your company policies, you have a clause that speaks about anti-discrimination. You have information about, okay, if, for instance, someone faces an incident of discrimination or harassment, you know, what are the steps people need to follow, etc. Who is the person to report to? Do people know within your company? So really important. A fair career path. So do we have equal opportunities for growth within the company? You know, when we're looking at our own reflection, are we biased in any way? Do we have salary grids to help ensure that we remove that bias? I just see a comment really quickly. I have to go. Thank you. Oh, you're most welcome. You're most welcome. Thank you for coming. And the last one is equal pay. Equal pay. So do we have equal pay between men and women? So for the same role, do we have equal pay between men and women? If it's what is the differentiation between pay? So for example, having a salary grid that helps people understand why they are being paid a particular salary. For example, maybe you base it on experience, you base it on seniority, etc. But people really understand why they're being paid a particular salary for their job, and ensuring that people who are within the same position and have the same competency are earning the same salary and not being discriminated against based on gender or any other thing. And yeah, these are the companies that we're currently working with. It would be absolutely lovely for you to join us. And in our platform, we have over 10,000 women in our platform at 50 in Tech. And within this community at 50 in Tech, people are able to connect with their peers, and they're also able to connect with different people that represent the companies that we work with. And you can actually have a one-on-one conversation. You can be able to reach out. People can apply directly on the platform to inclusive companies. We have over 2,000 safe jobs, and we have many positions for juniors as well. So our organization actually targets people from various levels of seniority, and we really encourage ensuring that there is none of that age bias or that experience bias. The women within our network are also able to learn, so they're empowered through masterclasses. So a lot of the time we have people come and really speak on topics that the women with. And so, for example, some of our clients will speak on their journey. For example, as a VP of data, we have a salary negotiation bootcamp once a year where we help women understand how they can negotiate their salary, and we have our clients come and contribute in that sense. So really important closing words is stop fixing women and start fixing the workplace. It's really important for men and women alike to be able to come to the